It's now 2025, and since 2015, it's kind of crazy to say that. I was 19 years old at that time, and there's been a lot of generations and a lot of new cars that have came along, and I'm just trying to figure out what are actually the very best cars in the last 10 years, the best looking cars. Let me be specific here. And before I name the top 10, we are going to take out a couple things. We're going to exclude a couple cars because we're not going to include supercars in this list. Subjectively, they're probably going to be the best looking cars. Subjectively. That doesn't mean that every single supercar looks good, but it would kind of take away from the list. It took me a while to do this. I went through every single year, every single model year, different cars, and kind of decided what actually looks the best. I want you to pause right here and tell me what you think are the top, or tell me where the top three are. I'm kind of curious on what you think. Then right off the bat, I'm going to give some honorable mentions. Some cars, and also in this list, I'm going to include trucks and SUVs. We're just going to talk about vehicles in general, but you get the gist of it. Some honorable mentions I thought of. The first one, right off the bat, is going to be the Civic Type R, the 10th generation. I feel like the Civic Type R was the last of like the true JDM cars, how we remember it. Talking about 2000s Fast and Furious, you know what I'm talking about. Instead of the 11th generation, they've kind of gotten away from it, so it is what it is. Also, the Genesis G80. I think it looks super classy. It's just a good looking car all around. Not much else to say about that. Another one has to be the Toyota GR86. This is like a mini Toyota Supra, but I think it's done in the most tasteful way possible. One alternative to a Mazda Miata. One I had to include on this list is going to be the Ram TRX. You cannot tell me this is not the best looking truck on the road. And no hate to the Ford Raptor, but this is just truly the best looking truck. I'm not even like one of those guys who are like, oh, I hate this truck or certain brands. I like all of them. If they look good and they have good performance, I like them. But in the last 10 years, this has to be one of the most menacing trucks you've seen. But let's get onto the list. All right, we're locked in, guys. The top 10 list. We are going to start with number 10 is going to the Ford Bronco. That might have caught you by surprise, but hear me out. There hasn't been a competitor as far as like the design language goes from the Jeep Wrangler to any other manufacturer in the world. It seems like Jeep kind of created their entire design language around the Wrangler and nothing else has touched it since. Now outside possibly the G-Wagon, but that's in a whole different class of vehicles, so not going to really count that. But an affordable, boxy, off-road vehicle that looks like a Jeep Wrangler but not a Jeep Wrangler, and no, we're not talking about a Geo Tracker either. As far as the design goes, the Ford Bronco looks very good, and I might say it looks better than Jeep Wrangler. Number 9 might not be no surprise to a lot of people, but we're going with the C7 Corvette. Now a lot of people argue the C6 is the most timeless looking and everything, but obviously this was not in the last 10 years, and outside of that there's nothing to take away from the C7. I think the C7 looks absolutely beautiful. They carry the design language from the last 4 generations, and I think they did it very well. I love the sloping long roof that Corvette's known for. Sorry, C8. And this one's just really hard to beat. I think this one is going to age really well. We don't know yet, but I think it will. Number 8 is going to the Toyota Supra MK5. Let's just be honest with each other. The only reason you do not like the Supra is because it doesn't look like the original. You have to remember that these cars are 20 years apart. 20 years. I think they redesigned it purposely and it actually makes sense for this day and age. And as I mentioned, the honorable mention of the GR86, I think the Toyota Supra just took that design language and just beefed it up. A lot more aggressive lines. The front end, honestly, is my favorite part of this vehicle. And when you see that car, just like the Supra that you know and love, when you see that Supra, you know that it's a Supra. That's why it's number 8 on this list. Number 7 is the Jaguar F-Type. The F-Type doesn't get a lot of love, even the base models. I mean, as far as just the design goes, don't come at me about performance, reliability. I don't want to hear none of that. The F-Type is a good-looking GT car. Don't even know if it's a GT car or a sports car. You could tell me that. Either way, from a design standpoint, this thing looks good. I think it's going to age really well. You could buy one of these for a pretty good price right now. Not the biggest fan of the brand, but I think they did a very good job on the F-Type. And number 6 is the first generation Audi RS7, or really any of the 7 series. The Raceback or Sportback or whatever you want to call it looks perfect on this car. Wish manufacturers took notes from Audi and did this on a lot of other vehicles. I actually wish that this is how they did the M4. The M4 you can only get in a Grand Coupe, so you can't get the standard coupe M4 with a hatchback or sportback. That's what should have happened. These cars are over 10 years old and I think they look really amazing. We are now in the top 5 and we're getting right into it. So the BMW F80 M3. That's not a surprise. You cannot come up to me and tell me that the F80 is not one of the best looking cars in the last 10 years. Personally, I love the G chassis vehicles, including the G80. But when we're looking at timeless design, the F80 is one of the best vehicles in this class. This car is going to age so gracefully, and I'm so excited for that. It's one of those cars that I might look back in the next like 5 to 10 years from now and purchase one. Same way people do with the E36, E46, yada, yada, yada. And number 4 on this list is a pretty new car. It just came out last year. We were talking the Lotus Emira. Term baby supercar, this is literally the archetype of that. I've only seen one in person and I instantly fell in love with it. It is as small as you think it is though. It is, you can see a supercar next to it and it's a lot longer and just a lot wider. The way they did the proportions on this vehicle are perfect. This is what I've been wanting to see from Lotus for the last 10, 15, 20 years. Now they've done some good iterations over the last couple of years, but the Lotus Emira is the pinnacle of that. I will 100% have one of these in my garage in the next couple of years. And then we can stitch this video back and make a cool inspirational quote. But now the top three. This might come as a surprise, but these are objectively the best looking cars. Not subjectively, objectively. Argue with me if you want. Number 3 is going to the BMW i8. I said it. It is what it is. People hate on the i8 because it kind of introduced the electric line for BMW, but as far as design goes, this thing was insane for its time and today. In case you somehow forgot how good this car looks, just look at this from every single angle. I want to see another iteration of this car because this car is already pretty old as far as cars go, and it still looks futuristic. The scissor doors is what just set it off, and those scissor doors are actually made with a mix of materials, including carbon fiber. One of the people I remember posting about this was DDG when he got his BMW i8, and I just like fell in love with this car. It's not the fastest car on the road. It's obviously not the most unique, but it's really a standalone car that I think a lot of people are going to appreciate in the future. The next one might surprise a few people, but number 2 on this list goes to the Mercedes G-Class 4x4 Squared. This was introduced in 2015 and it became a fan favorite of everybody once it dropped. This took the punctual, boxy design of the G-Class and just elevated it. This would definitely be a dream SUV of mine, just from a design aspect alone. I think out of every car, if we're just talking about timelessness, this is the most timeless vehicle that we'll probably ever experience in our lifetime. That is why it's pretty much not been redesigned in decades and it hasn't had any refresh since like 2002. Take a moment and pause this video and tell me what you think number 1 is going to be. We're referring to any cars from 2015 to 2025. The number 1 vehicle for the best looking car the last 10 years is the Lexus LC500. Just the fact that Lexus took their concept from, I believe, 2012, they showed this car, the whole concept version, and made it a reality is insane. Those are not that familiar with concept cars and stuff. When they come out with concept cars, I could say 9 times out of 10 you are not going to get that look that you see on the concept. When it's all said and done, you basically get like a 10% revision of what that was and everything else has changed. I remember watching that show. I was actually really young when it actually came out. I was probably like in middle school and I could not believe my eyes. I couldn't picture a car actually looking like that in real life. Since that moment, it has been my dream car. A lot of people might argue $100,000 for a GT vehicle, probably not worth it. You could buy a lot of other cars for that, like Porsches or different BMW M cars. But for me, this car is special. This car looks so futuristic and they have not made any design changes since it came out in 2018. So if we were to put a list of the best design cars of all time, this would definitely be in the top 20. I really love making lists like this, so I hope you enjoyed it. And if you enjoy this list, let me know what kind of list you want to see next. But I'll see you on the next one.